Hi, I'm Ashton. Welcome back to my floor. It's been a while. How are we doing? Are we struggling? Can't just be me, right? I think that YouTube, Mr. YouTube, is not going to like this video, but I wanted to put it out there anyway, so hopefully some of you enjoy it. I know I haven't posted in a while, and YouTube doesn't like that anyway, so posting a super political video as my coming back after 3 months video is maybe not the best idea, but I do what I want. Some of you might see some clues already from the shirt, or maybe the bookshelf, I don't know. I'm going to put on some makeup because I haven't done that in a while and I would like to. And then if I finish that before I'm finished talking, which I feel like I probably will because I have a lot of words to say, I am going to work on my current scrap yarn crochet project. I'm making a hat. Do you like it? But I think that's more or less the intro covered, so we can kind of just get into it. Why do I call myself an anarchist? What's anarchism? Why am I an anarchist? Ashton answered these questions for me. Hello, that's what I'm gonna do. Right off the bat, before I get into anything personal, obviously I want to say that, like, every person in every political circle is unique. Nothing is universal. Your local communities might be different. If I say something that applies to my local anarchist circles and you're like, that's not the case for, I don't know, North Dakota, then that's fine. Nothing I ever say is universal. Take everything I say with a grain of salt, etc., etc. I'm just a random guy on the internet. You don't know me. And if something I say does not align with your personal experiences, that's okay. You're gonna be fine. I also want you to remember that in terms of revolutionary politics and any politics, really, the important shit doesn't happen online. There's discourse online all the time, sure. And yeah, sometimes I am a discourse participant. Rarely, these days, now that I'm off of Twitter, finally. If you're not off of Twitter yet, it will improve your life, I promise. Go anywhere else, literally anywhere else. Anyway, I feel like I talk about politics a lot online, but I don't really feel like I'm an online discourse person in the way that I kind of maybe used to be, even on YouTube or Tumblr maybe. I still talk about politics, I just talk about politics in a very different way than I used to, I feel like. And I think it's a good thing. I think I've evolved as a person, which is what you would hope over the course of 10 years, right? Anyway, that is not to say that I don't think internet activism can't be impactful. It absolutely can. Theory happens online all the time, and sometimes praxis even happens online, right? But I do think the most important things are often ephemeral and not recorded online. And talking about politics online is sometimes inherently reductive. And I wanted to acknowledge that before I get into things, because there are things that have impacted my politics that I'm just not going to talk about, because it's not smart to talk about everything you do politically online. And I'm not saying this in the boat of like, well, leftists are chronically online, go touch grass. That's not what I mean. My point is more that it's really easy to lose sight of your actual values and what you actually care about if you put all of your political energy into doom scrolling and rage bait. I guess a part of my point with this video is to encourage you to think about what you actually care about and maybe even take some action about it. I do feel like before I really get into it, I should tell you what anarchism is in case you are new to the world of it. Maybe we should start off with, like, what is anarchism in the first place, right? That's not what this video is about. This is not a 101. I'm not going to teach you everything there is to know. Nobody can. But anarchism broadly means without rulers or without authority. It's an anti-hierarchy philosophy. A lot of people mistakenly equate it with chaos, which is kind of silly because the circle A logo actually means anarchism is order. That's what the O, the circle, is for. It's for order. Anarchism does not mean no organization whatsoever. It just means no hierarchies whatsoever. And if you don't understand the difference between those two things, there's a lot of resources down in the description to help you learn a little bit more about anarchy. I'm going to put some 101 stuff. The anarchist FAQ is going to be down there. Plenty of stuff that you can peruse with your own time if you would like to, but that's the basic definition that I'll give you. But now that that's out of the way and we all have a kind of shared understanding of what anarchy is to begin with, I grew up in the southern United States. I always have lived here. I know I have kind of a funky accent. It's because my parents are Canadian. So I grew up in the South, but I grew up with a lot of, like, northern idealism in a way. I came at politics from my parents' very Canadian neoliberal perspective, but I did not stay there for very long once I started becoming, like, an independent person. I never really identified as a Democrat or any sort of party system. I was like 13 when I already believed that that stuff was simply not going to work. I became disillusioned pretty young. I came out as trans when I was 13-ish. So I've been a political person for a really long time, and my identity has impacted my politics. Obviously, that is how being a person works. But I was introduced to anarchy as an idea through anarcho-punk music when I was, I don't know, 12, 13. I started with Against Me, still one of my favorite bands. I got really into Crass, I listened to Doom and Nausea and like pretty much anything I could find. Anarcho-punk music has always just hit me right through the heart. It's really like deeply impacted me. And obviously it's not just a music genre, it's connected to the wider world of and ideas of anarchism. And when you develop a very deep love for a very political subgenre of music, you start to look into the politics a little bit too. I feel like I read a lot about communism and Marxist theory before I actually got into anarchism and anarchist theory. I don't know if I've called myself a Marxist like publicly online at all, but I do think a lot of my political thoughts have been influenced by Marx because he was the first like politics guy that I really read. I think the first thing that I want to like actually substantially dive into is my values. I think the things that I value and care about the most are the things that make me an anarchist. I'm someone who, if I think about anything for long enough, and you'll know this if you've watched a lot of my videos, I can and I will connect it back to anarchism. Anti-racism is about fighting white supremacy, and what is white supremacy if not a hierarchy? Trans-liberation is about destroying cis-sexism. I want to get rid of gendered hierarchies where men are placed above women, and also endosex people are placed above intersex people, and cis people are placed above trans people. All of those things are hierarchies, and all of those things can be addressed through anarchism. Even environmentalist causes can be considered in terms of hierarchies. A lot of environmental destruction has occurred because a lot of people that are in charge think that humans and humanity are more important or in a hierarchy above the rest of the planet and the rest of the world, right? Big oil companies and the cobalt industry and all sorts of resource gathering practices kind of have this underlying idea that profit is more important than the planet. And having humans on a hierarchy above the rest of the frickin' world is something that a lot of anarchists take issue with, right? Since I was introduced to anarchism, it's just been very, very easy for me to connect every social justice fight and every environmental fight back to anarchism, because so many liberatory struggles are just struggles against hierarchies in one way or another. Everything that people are fighting for is a fight against hierarchies. So I think that anarchism makes sense to talk about a lot of different social justice issues, and I wish that more social justice folks would talk about anarchy. I guess it's not the worst eyeliner in the world for someone who hasn't done it in 3 months, huh? So many different issues can really easily be explained by thinking of them as problems of hierarchies, and anarchism gives us a really simple solution to hierarchies. Abolish them. I started on this train of thought because I wanted to talk about my values, and I went in a different direction, but if I remove myself from political labels and I think about the things that I care about, I value self-determination and autonomy. I value compassion and environmental protection and egalitarianism and interdependence and accessibility and imagination. And a lot of these things fit really neatly within anarchism, right? But I want to pause on imagination for a second. One of the most frequent and immediate critiques of anarchism is that it's unrealistic. I do not think that we should base our politics in what is realistic, because I think what is realistic has been shaped by what is currently occurring, right? The people that are currently in power shape what we view as realistic because they don't want anything else to happen other than what's happening right now, which is corporate greed and capitalism making everyone else miserable. I don't think anarchism is unrealistic. I think what's unrealistic is continuing to live under capitalism. I think what's unrealistic is extracting all of Earth's resources until we have nothing left and we're living in a wasteland. I think what's unrealistic is not giving anyone freaking healthcare or housing or food. I think what's unrealistic is capitalism. I don't think anarchism is unrealistic because I have an imagination, because I can imagine a world that is not like the one that we live in currently. And if you can't, that's okay. It's hard to imagine things other than the world we currently live in, but we have to, right? There has to be something better because what's currently happening is completely unacceptable, and I can't be the only one that thinks that way, and I know I'm not the only one that thinks that way. I live in the States, right? So a lot of my political surroundings are based in what is happening in the States, and the States is kind of always in the center of world politics because of the way that it's done its whole imperialist scheme, etc. But that's not the only way we can do politics, and that's not the only way that we as like humanity as a whole can live our lives. There are other options, and imagining only capitalism is really sad to me. It's really sad. I think we should have more imagination than that. Have a little whimsy, you know? Think about mutual aid for once, goddamn. There's a Ursula K. Le Guin quote that I think about a lot, despite not having read any of her books yet, which I know should be illegal for me to call myself an anarchist and not have gotten there yet. I will, I'll get there. It's on my TBR. I have a long TBR. She said, "We live in capitalism. Its power seems inescapable. So did the divine right of kings. Any human power can be resisted and changed by human beings." And a lot of anarchists like that quote, right? Because it points us towards a better future. That's what a lot of anarchist speculative fiction does, right? Is imagines better worlds and better futures and better possibilities than the ones we live in now. And I think that shit's important. I think imagination is important, and I think that the fact that we are discouraged from imagining a better future says a lot about the current political environment that we live in. I used to be someone that didn't care about the future. You know, I used to be suicidal. So I didn't give a shit. And now that I am alive and enjoying living for the most part, I care a lot about the future. I care a lot about the future of everybody, not just myself, but the future of the planet and the future of animals. And I want to see something better than what we have right now. The future of capitalism, hell, the present of capitalism, right, is something that is horrible. It's something full of environmental destruction, bigotry in all of its forms, fascism, and anarchists care about the future. If you're trying to figure out where you fit politically, I think some of the best advice I could give is to try to detach yourself from thinking about labels too much and think about what you actually care about, think about what you value, as opposed to thinking about whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, because party politics don't really mean anything. They don't really stand for much outside of the interests of the United States and continuing to keep us in the hellscape we are currently in. There are options outside of two-party politics. If you take nothing else away from this video, and you didn't already know that, please remember that. Another thing that I feel like has been very useful in figuring out where I stand is looking at what's happening around me and who is doing the boots on the ground work about the things that I give a shit about. And for me, the things that I care the most about are things that anarchists are working on. They are not things that Democrats care about or think about at all, it seems. Like I mentioned at the beginning, it's not smart to talk too much about this shit online, so I'm not going to get too specific because it would not be clever, but it's always appeared and felt to me that the things that I care the most about are the things that anarchists are doing. And if the stuff that I care about are the things that the anarchists are doing, then maybe I'm an anarchist, you know? One of my first major political awakenings was about the prison-industrial complex and the idea of abolishing the prison-industrial complex as something that is possible. Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow is a book that really, really deeply politically impacted me. I highly encourage you to read it. I've talked about it many, many times online. And I'm going to be talking about abolition a lot more, actually, in my next video, so you can stick around for that. But I think prisons are a terrible way of handling crime and punishment, and it's a really unjust justice system, and I think they need to go. We gotta get rid of them. And you know who's working on prison-industrial complex abolition? It's the anarchists, the people that are doing letter writing to incarcerated people, the people that are doing prison book programs, the people that are doing jail and court support, people putting together bail funds, people working against cop cities. Those are all anarchists.
What's up? Editing Ashton is also going to pop in quite a bit in this video because I have additional things to say that I thought of while I was editing, of course. What I wanted to add here is that in addition to caring about police and prison abolition through a lens of it is what is right and these systems are not doing anything to solve problems, they are creating more problems than they are solving, a lot of anarchists also care about it because there are a lot of anarchist political prisoners. A lot of anarchists are locked up for their political beliefs and political actions. If you were the head of an oppressive state and you thought an ideology a la anarchism was dangerous to your oppressive state, what is a good way to quiet down critique of your oppressive regime? What is a good way to make anarchism less popular, if not lock up anarchists? So, something to think about.
I also think that everyone should have access to food, regardless of your housing status or your job status or anything whatsoever. I think everyone should have food to eat. And people that do food distros, a lot of them are anarchists. People that work in groups like Food Not Bombs, people that put together community fridges. A lot of those people that are directly getting food to people who need it are anarchists. There are also, of course, things like food banks and more charity-driven services, but what I care about is mutual aid and people doing things directly without hierarchies involved with them. You know, things like church-led food banks can do good things, but I do not think we need hierarchy to do good things. I also do not think we need the church to do good things. And you know who I see distributing food all the time? It is not the people in the PSL, it's the anarchists. I also care about COVID. Yes, I still care about COVID. And I'm not going to get too deep into it now, but I still wear a mask in public places, and I believe that you should too. And you know who else still believes that? It's the anarchists. The anarchist gatherings and events that I have been to are truly some of the only places where I still see people masked. If I see a poster for an event that says masks required, the chances that it's an anarchist event, they're pretty high up there. Some of the only people that still care about COVID are anarchists. And that's something that matters a lot to me because I'm a disabled person and I'm someone that cares a lot about marginalized people, and COVID impacts marginalized people a heck of a lot more than it impacts privileged people. And that's something that we all should be talking about and considering every single day of our lives. And so many people have simply forgotten about it in favor of making money for capitalists. And I don't think that's very cool of us. And you know who I see doing mask block stuff? You know who I see doing stuff about COVID education or COVID safer social circles? It's the anarchists.
I wanted to mention here that a lot of anarchists also wear masks for non-COVID reasons that are also very important and I think should be mentioned because I'm already talking about it here. I know I said I wouldn't get too deep into it and I'm not going to, but anyway, a lot of anarchists also wear masks for facial concealment reasons, whether it is because you are doing direct actions that are not entirely legal or whether it is because you want to be not recorded on a cop's lapel camera, or you don't want to be recorded by a drone, or you don't want to be recorded by cameras around the city that you're in, or you don't want your face to be recognized by AI. There's a lot of like personal safety concerns that anarchists have for valid reasons that push a lot of people towards masking. So there's more than one reason to mask. Masking for community care and reducing viral load and transmission is wonderful and beautiful and is completely valid reason on its own, but there are also additional reasons. I'm going to link quite a few zines on masking down in the description if you're interested in it from an anarchist perspective, because the Venn diagram of zine makers, anarchists, and people that still wear masks is like a really, really tight Venn diagram. I think it's very fascinating. So more information on that down below. Just wanted to add that in there.
I also care a lot about the environment. I'm concerned about the environment. Lots of people everywhere are concerned about the environment, as we all should be. But you know who I think does the really important stuff about the environment? You'll never guess. Is it anarchists? Guys, could it be anarchists? Land back and land sovereignty movements are oftentimes led by indigenous anarchists. Movements to stop pipeline construction, like the Dakota Access Pipeline. You know who's doing that stuff? You know who's sitting in bulldozers? It's anarchists. I'm also going to mention Cop City again because that is also an environmental issue. And you know who cares about cop cities? You'll never guess, guys. But I think it might be the anarchists. I could go on, right? I could talk about trans liberation and I could talk about queer stuff and I could talk about disability stuff even, but my point is, whenever I care about something and I look for the people around me that are doing like material work about that thing and not just like, let's all call our senators, it's the anarchists. They're doing the stuff that I want to be involved in. So maybe I'm an anarchist too. And that's something that I would encourage you to do as well. Think about the things that you care the most about. What are the things that are the most impactful to you? What are the things that you worry about for your future, for the future of the planet? Maybe it's trans liberation, maybe it's disability justice, maybe it's class struggle, but all of those things, there are anarchists working on those things. I promise you, no matter where you are, there are probably people like you. You just need to find them. And it can be hard to find them. It truly can be. Social media can be helpful, but look for flyers around you. Look for stickers. Are there other anarchists stickering around you? There probably are. And I get that there is a certain amount of privilege tied to this, that not everybody does live in a place with any sort of anarchist community, but people out there exist like you, and they might be even closer than you think. I wanted to talk a little bit about specific labels as well, because I've called myself an anarcho-syndicalist in the past. Anarcho-syndicalism, if you are not aware, kind of generally speaking, is a branch of anarchism that focuses on building union power to create an anarchist world. I also pretty strongly identify with eco-anarchism and anarcho-feminism and queer anarchism. And the reason that I just call myself an anarchist and don't narrow myself down to any of those necessarily is because I think all of those things are just kind of included under the umbrella of anarchism as a whole. Like, it makes more sense for me to just say I'm an anarchist and then expound upon environmentalism and queer stuff and disability stuff. I think I simply care too much about too many things to pick one like label. And I don't think there's anything wrong with calling yourself a like anarcho blank or anarcha blank or blank anarchist or whatever. I don't think there's anything wrong with getting more specific about it, but I also think that it's totally fine to call yourself an anarchist without adjectives, or just call yourself an anarchist, because all of those things do fall under anarchism. And if you're an anarchist who doesn't necessarily believe in feminism, then maybe you're just not an anarchist, you know? On anarcho-syndicalism specifically, I don't not call myself an anarcho-syndicalist anymore because I don't believe that unions are important. I do think unions are important. I just more so believe that a diversity of tactics is what we need, and just focusing on worker power is not the only way towards anarchism. We can build anarchist communities, like do anarchist organizing without only doing unions. You know, I don't think we need to be that specific. So I have nothing against anarcho-syndicalists. Used to call myself an anarcho-syndicalist, but that's why I don't call myself an anarcho-syndicalist anymore. I just think there's way more out there than anarcho-syndicalism, and it was naive of me to call myself that when I hadn't like fully explored all of my thought processes yet. And I just think, personally for me, calling myself an anarchist without adjectives makes the most sense, because all of it is just under anarchism, and I can be a green anarchist, I can be an eco-anarchist, I can be a feminist anarchist without only labeling myself as such, you know? So that was my little sidebar about labels. I also wanted to talk about anarchist organizing and political action in general, because I feel like getting involved in real life was huge for me in terms of like identifying more specifically as an anarchist. And I think getting involved in stuff in real life on any level, whether it is like once a year or once a week, is really, really impactful on becoming a more political person and learning how to speak about politics and how to have important conversations that are not just yelling at each other online. And again, I can't and don't speak for everyone, but the level of confidence I had in calling myself an anarchist before interacting with anarchists in real life versus like after finding circles and communities of anarchists in real life that are like working on things and trying to do things to make the world a better place, like it's a whole different experience and feeling of calling yourself an anarchist and identifying with a political group, right? And I'm sure a lot of people feel that way. But the reason I wanted to talk about organizing specifically is for a couple of reasons. One, I am not an organizer. I do not organize events. I don't organize my own life. I can't organize a bunch of other people. I cannot handle a bunch of Signal group chats. I cannot send out mass notifications. I cannot be in large groups of people organizing other people. It's just not for me. I've tried it a few times. It's just not for me. It's overwhelming. I'm autistic. It's not for me. But I can be a participant, and I can show up when I am called, and I can go to events, and I can put a bunch of leftover work potatoes in the local community fridges, you know? There are ways to get involved with people around you that are not necessarily doing like the organizing part. You don't have to be an organizer to be involved in organizing. The real reason that I wanted to touch on this is because there is a major difference in the way that authoritarian leftists versus anti-authoritarian leftists or anarchists tend to organize. Anarchist organizing is by its very nature horizontal. It's anarchist. Everyone is involved. Everyone has a say. Decisions a lot of the times are made collectively. Different people can do different things. You can step down from roles or step up into roles pretty much whenever you want. It's not that there's no commitments, but it's that there isn't hierarchical power. No one is in charge of the Food Not Bombs. The Food Not Bombs is like a group of people that are all working together to make a thing happen, as opposed to one guy saying, you're going to cook 10 pots of chili, and you're going to clean it up, and you're going to drive it to the fridge, and you're going to do the distro. That's not how it works. It's more like people volunteer for things. People aren't voluntold to do things. You do what you can based on your own capacity. It's not joining a party. It's not signing up for a newsletter. It's not giving your thumbprint to the DSA or the PSL. That's not what anarchists do, and I like it much better that way. When I was in college and before I went to college, there were multiple like leftist, more authoritarian groups that were on campus and like trying to get people involved. And it's always a newsletter. They always want your email. They want your address. They want to send you newspapers. They want you to come out to rallies and become an organizer. And none of those things are necessarily bad independently, but I'm going to link a couple things down below on like party politics and vanguardism and why a lot of anarchists are opposed to it. What I wrote specifically for this isn't anti-union. This is anti the 20 million people's parties and communist parties and Trotskyist parties and Maoist parties that all have hierarchical organizations and focus on recruitment and whose structures can and do serve to hide abuse. There's a good zine on this idea that I'm going to link down below. There's a bunch of stuff that I'm going to link down below, but that one I would specifically recommend checking out because one of the true major material differences between authoritarian politic organizing and anarchist politic organizing are in how the organizations exist. And if you're into horizontal decision making, if you're into being a part of a community that values your voice, whether or not you are an organizer who's been trained with the DSA, then maybe anarchism is for you. There's a reason that PSL waves a big red flag. Another thing I made a note of that I didn't really expound upon in my notes, but that I do really want to talk about, is that working with kids has really solidified my commitment to anarchism as well. Not just because I want the kids that I teach to grow up into a better world, but also because I think a lot of kids are just kind of naturally anarchists. I think a lot of people, before they are, politically indoctrinated by whatever party their parents are a part of, kind of believe in a freer, better world for everybody. So I teach horseback riding lessons, and I teach a lot of neurodivergent kids, and I go on a lot of, trail rides where we just talk about the world, and they're like, Ashton, do you think the trees are talking to each other? And I'm like, yes, I absolutely do. Anyway, I have had kids as young as 7, 6 ask me, why do we have money? Why doesn't everyone have healthcare? Why isn't food free? Why is the world the way that it is? And kids are asking good questions, and listening to kids and believing that kids deserve something better has really, really solidified the way that I believe the future should work. And there's a lot to be said about adult supremacy and believing and listening to kids, I think, here as well. And I say this as someone who does not want kids. I say this as someone who's sterile. But I do work with kids, and I do listen to them, and I do think that they have important things to say about the world. I came at anarchism from a lot of different places, right? Or I guess one place with a lot of different influences, right? I grew up as a queer, trans, autistic person with chronic pain that didn't really understand what was going on around me, or why I was being bullied so badly, or why I felt so terrible about the world. And I'm going to talk about this a lot more, I think, in my next video, which, again, I've mentioned a couple times, but I've been working on writing it for a really long time, and it's going to be scripted, and it's going to be quite long. Really? You're lawn mowing right now? At 3 p.m. on a Wednesday? You're doing yard work? So sorry, I will try to edit the background noise out. I always do. I always try my best about the background noise, but listen, my house has a fish tank, and we've got about 20 bugs in here, and they all make chewing noises and bubbling noises, and it is what it is sometimes. The bugs are in my house on purpose. My partner's really into bugs. We have a bunch of caterpillars and stuff. There's not just extraneous bugs in my house. They're intentional bugs in my house.
I think what I wanted to get into here before I got distracted by the lawnmower was about how the different identities that I have brought me to anarchism. And I think one of the largest aspects of that has been being queer. I've talked a lot about queer books on my channel. I've read a lot of queer books, probably over 100 at this point, and pretty much anything that I cared about from ages 12 to 16 was being gay and being involved in gay stuff, because it was the first time that I felt something so strongly tied to myself. And obviously I still feel very strongly about being queer. It's still a huge aspect of my life, but when you first discover being queer and you really get into it, you know that feeling, the baby gay energy, right? But I found that a lot of the gay politics that were mainstream gay politics, right? Liberal, neoliberal, capitalist, rainbow capitalist gay politics were really disappointing and underwhelming for me. And this was before I had any true radical sensibilities or had read any anarchist theory. But I was still at the time democracy, or the facade of democracy that we have in the States, cannot be the answer. Gay rights cannot come from such a failing system. I just thought, oh my God, look at my cat. The anthology Against Equality, edited by Ryan Conrad, was really, really big for me in terms of realizing there are other gay people that feel this way. The gay mainstream politics is not the only gay politics. There are radical gay politics, and queer anarchism, gay radicalism was a huge turning point for me in terms of politics, because it took me from I think everyone should have rights and everyone should be equal to holy shit, we need to destroy everything. We need to burn this down. So yeah, that's what I wanted to insert in here.
Anyway, I was coming close to wrapping up this video anyway, so I did want to end by mentioning some of the media that has really politically influenced me really heavily. And it's all stuff that I've talked about before. But if you have not read Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower duology, highly recommend it. If you have not read Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow, and you live in the States especially, highly recommend it. If you have not read Captive Genders, edited by Eric Stanley, highly recommend that as well. These are some of my favorite books if you want any more recommendations. This is my favorites shelf. It's my only color coordinated shelf, but some of them are not really about anarchism, but Zami was really politically influential to me. I read it for the first time like my first year of college, and I've read it like 3 times since. It's really, really good. And that one is a biomythography, so it's not a nonfiction book like the rest of my recommendations are. Of course, anything by Mariame Kaba is really good if you want to learn more about prison and police abolition, or just the idea of abolition in general, which is very, very tied in heavy to anarchism, right? Of course, anarchism and abolition are like besties. You can always read Marx, right? Marx is always there for you if you want to learn a little bit more about economics, but like, I don't really care that much about economics, to be honest. I find it quite boring, and I think we should destroy it. It's all just kind of lines, and we don't really need it, do we? Don't answer that question.
A lot of those books are abolitionist or speculative fiction, but I did also want to mention some like explicitly anarchist stuff to read, and I just didn't because they started lawn mowing and I got distracted. But I did also want to mention Emma Goldman's essays. Her stuff was really, really important in drawing me to anarchism. A lot of them are available through the Anarchist Library, as well as Peter Kropotkin's Mutual Aid and Conquest of Bread. My university library had like 100-year-old copies of those, and I treasured them. I ate them up. Really, really good books. Not necessarily the most accessible, but I think they're very readable, and they were very enjoyable for me. I feel like a lot of what I've read about anarchism has been through zines or through essays, not necessarily through books. And more so than books explicitly about anarchism, I personally get a lot of anarchist ideas by reading books about history and social or economic or environmental justice. Like I have talked about this whole video, anarchism connects to so many different things that you don't just have to read about explicitly anarchism itself to read something that makes you feel like an anarchist, if that makes sense. Anyways, back to the video. It's almost over.
I still have some patches available from my last drop if you would like any. I'm going to do another set of patches as soon as I finish my next lino cut, but I'm making like a really big lino cut, and yes, it's about anarchism, and it's going to take me like a while, so... But you know, selling patches is not my job, it is my hobby, so it's not important, and I'm not worried about doing it quickly. Anyway, if you're intrigued and you want to learn a bit more about anarchism, again, plenty of links and videos down below. There's a really great one by Andrewism. I'll probably link something by Thought Slime, and if I don't, just go to Slotfine? And if I don't, just go to Thought Slime's channel, and you'll find plenty of stuff. You can always go to like my recommended channel page. They're pretty much all anarchists. There is so much out there for you to learn, and so many ways that you can explore your values and figure out where you lie politically, but that is where I lie politically, and that is what I wanted to talk about today. I don't think I've ever discussed this as like directly as I have. I've talked about being an anarchist, I've talked about being an abolitionist, but it's not something that I've discussed like my journey with, you know? So hopefully this was helpful and enjoyable. Hopefully it wasn't too long. I didn't finish my hat, but I did finish my makeup, so, you know, a successful video nonetheless. I didn't really discuss zines. There is a zine link down below that I mentioned earlier, but zines are also a really big part of why I'm into anarchy. A lot of zinesters are anarchists as well. So many of the like hobby communities that I'm in overlap a lot with anarchists. You would be surprised of how many fiber artists are also anarchists. I think just in general, artists tend to be anarchists, as well as autistic people. If you're an autistic anarchist, me and you, buddy. We're in it together. Anyway, thank you for listening. Feel free to ask any questions in the comments or tell me about your own political coming of age. Would love to hear about it. The best part of making YouTube videos is getting to read the comments and reply to the comments. So I always appreciate those. You guys are the greatest. I am afraid that Big Mr. YouTube is not going to love this video or it's going to attract some negative attention. So I will be monitoring the comments, of course. But yeah, I'll see you down there. Hopefully my next video will not be too far away, but you know, editing is kind of a hellscape, and I'm working so much less in the summer than I do in the spring and fall, so I'll be able to do a little bit more hobby stuff like YouTube, which is, you know, kind of a job also, but like a job I don't get paid enough for. Goodbye, comrades. I hope that you feel comfortable calling yourself whatever political label that you feel suits you best. And I hope that you learn to explore your actual values instead of finding them from the institutional politics that surround you. And I will talk to you later, maybe. Wear a mask.